Minsu lived alone. His home was a small, strong pod tucked into the side of a green, mossy hill. The planet was quiet, and that was how he liked it. Outside his window, strange plants with purple leaves swayed in the gentle wind. 2 small moons hung in the orange sky during the day. He was a man from Earth, from a country called Korea, but he had left that life behind a long time ago. Here he was the only human. He spent his days taking care of his plants. He grew food and water without soil, under bright lights inside his pod. He checked the machines that made the air clean and the water safe. It was a simple, quiet life. He had not always been alone. Once he had been a scientist who studied plants on other worlds. He had been an engineer who built things. But things had happened. Bad things. Now he wanted only peace and silence. His pod was hidden well. From the outside it looked like just another part of the hill. But inside it was full of human technology. Screens showed pictures of the forest around him. Small hidden cameras let him watch the animals. He saw the large, slow-moving Borland beasts with their 6 legs and shaggy fur. He saw the quick, lizard-like Trellics chasing each other through the trees. He watched them all, but he never went close. He did not want to disturb them. He did not want to be disturbed. One evening, as the sun was setting and the sky turned a deep red, a quiet beep came from his main screen. It was a warning. Minsu looked up from his dinner of rice and vegetables. He walked over to the screen. The warning was not for a Borland beast or a Trellic. The signal was different. It was sharp and angry. It was the signal of high technology, the kind of technology that did not belong on this quiet world. Minsu's face became serious. His calm eyes grew hard. He touched the screen to see more. 2 signals. They were moving fast through the trees near the river, and they were chasing a third, much smaller signal. He zoomed in with one of his hidden cameras. The picture was a little fuzzy because of the trees, but he could see clearly enough. His blood ran cold. There were 2 large figures. They were tall and wore heavy gray armor. They carried long, nasty-looking guns that glowed with a blue energy. Hunters. He had met their kind before. They were not from this world. They traveled to quiet planets like this one to hunt rare animals, or sometimes to capture intelligent creatures to sell. They were chasing a small fleeing shape. It was a child. A small alien girl. She had smooth, shiny skin that looked like it was made of pearl. Her hair was long and dark. She ran desperately, her large, bright eyes wide with pure fear. She was fast, but the hunters were faster. One of them raised his gun. A blue bolt of energy shot out and hit a tree next to her, exploding it into splinters. The force of the blast threw her to the ground. Minsu's hands clenched into fists. His heart beat hard in his chest. Every part of him wanted to look away, to turn off the screen, to pretend he never saw it. His life was about staying hidden, staying safe. Getting involved was dangerous. It could bring the attention of the wider galaxy to his quiet home. It could destroy everything he had built. He watched as the little girl tried to get up. She was hurt. She limped, holding her leg. The hunters walked toward her slowly now. They were not in a hurry. They knew they had won. One of them made a rough laughing sound. Minsu remembered why he had left his old life. He remembered faces he had tried to forget. People he could not save. A failure that haunted him every night. Was he going to let it happen again? Was he going to hide in his hole while a child was taken right outside his door? No, he whispered to the empty pod. The quiet, lonely silence of his home suddenly felt heavy and wrong. He moved quickly. He went to a locked cabinet and typed a code. The door opened with a hiss. Inside on a rack was a rifle. It was not like the hunter's guns. It did not burn or cut. It was a sonic rifle. It fired waves of sound that could stun a person or knock down a wall. It was a tool for controlling a situation, not for killing. He had not touched it in years. He put on a sturdy jacket and a communications headset. On his wrist, he activated a small device. It was a portable scanner. It showed him the positions of the hunters and the girl. He took a deep breath. He was not a soldier. He was a gardener, a hermit. But today he had to be something else. He opened the heavy door of his pod and stepped out into the cool evening air. The forest smells of damp earth and strange flowers filled his nose. He moved silently like a shadow, using the trees for cover. He knew this land better than anyone. He could hear the hunters now, their heavy footsteps, their guttural voices. He crept closer, staying low. He saw them. They were only 20 meters away. The girl was on the ground between them, curled into a ball. One hunter reached down to grab her. Minsu did not have a plan to fight them directly. They were too big, too strong, too well armed. But he knew the land, and he had his brain. He raised his sonic rifle. He did not aim at the hunters. He aimed at a large, loose pile of rocks on the steep hill above them. He adjusted the setting on his gun to its highest impact. He took a careful breath, held it, and fired. The sound was not loud to human ears, but it was a powerful, focused wave of force. It hit the pile of rocks like an invisible fist. The rock shuddered and then began to slide. At first it was a few stones, then more, and then a whole section of the hillside started to crumble and fall. The hunters looked up, startled. They shouted in surprise as a small avalanche of dirt and rocks tumbled down toward them. It was not enough to bury them, but it was enough to create chaos. Dust filled the air. They stumbled back, trying to shield themselves from the falling debris. In that moment of confusion, Minsu moved. He ran not toward the hunters, but in a wide circle, using the dust cloud as a screen. He came up behind the little girl. She flinched when she saw him, a new kind of fear in her eyes. He was a strange creature to her. He didn't try to speak. He just looked into her eyes, trying to show he was not a threat. He slung his rifle over his back and gently but quickly scooped her up into his arms. She was light. She trembled against his chest. He turned and ran back the way he came, deeper into the thick forest. He heard the hunters yelling behind him. One of them fired his energy gun blindly into the dust. A blue bolt sizzled past Minsu's head, hitting a tree and setting it on fire. Minsu did not stop. He ran faster than he had in years. His heart pounded in his ears. He weaved between trees, jumped over streams, and ducked under low branches. He knew every path. The hunters, confused and slowed by the landslide, were left behind. Their angry shouts grew fainter and fainter until they were gone, swallowed by the sounds of the forest. He did not stop running until he reached the hidden door of his pod. He typed the code with a shaking hand, the girl still clinging to him. The door slid open. He hurried inside, and the door closed behind him, sealing out the world and its dangers. He was safe. She was safe for now. He stood in the middle of his quiet home, breathing heavily, still holding the trembling alien girl in his arms. The silence of the pod was different now. It was not the silence of being alone. It was the silence after a storm. And he knew, deep down, that his life of quiet isolation was over. Create more chapters, headings, or parts numbers in each par. The heavy door sealed shut, and the familiar hum of the pod's systems filled the air. Minsu stood for a moment, his heart still hammering against his ribs. The little alien girl in his arms was rigid, her small fingers clutching the fabric of his jacket. Her large, luminous eyes were wide, darting around the strange, brightly lit room, taking in the glowing screens, the humming machines, and the rows of green plants under lamps. He knew he had to be careful. She was terrified. He was a giant, strange-smelling creature who had snatched her from the only world she knew. Slowly, carefully, he knelt and set her down on the soft floor mat. The moment her feet touched the ground, she scrambled backward until she hit the wall, pressing herself against it. She let out a small, fearful whimper, clutching her injured leg. A nasty burn from the hunter's energy weapon sizzled on her calf. "It's okay," Minsu said, his voice soft. He kept his distance, sitting on the floor a few meters away. He placed his sonic rifle on the floor beside him, pushing it away to show it was not a threat. "You are safe here," she just stared, trembling. He needed to communicate. He stood up slowly, moving without any sudden gestures, and walked to his main console. He tapped a few keys. A moment later, a small round device on the desk lit up. "Hello?" A calm, computerized voice said from the device. It then made a series of soft chirping and clicking sounds. The girl's head tilted. The sounds were familiar. The translator was a basic model, programmed with common galactic languages it had intercepted over the years. It was trying to find one she understood. Minsu pointed to himself. "Minsu," he said clearly. The device chirped again. The girl watched him, her fear mixing with a flicker of curiosity. She slowly uncurled a little. She pointed a delicate finger at him. "Minsu?" Her voice was a tiny musical whisper. He nodded, offering a small, gentle smile. It felt strange on his face. He hadn't smiled in a long time. He then pointed at her, a question on his face. She hesitated, then touched her own chest. "Sua," she whispered. "Sua," Minsu repeated. The name suited her, now the injury. He pointed to her leg, then to a small medkit on a shelf. He raised his eyebrows, asking for permission. Sua looked from his face to the kit and back. She gave a tiny, hesitant nod. He retrieved the kit and sat on the floor again, scooting closer but still leaving space. He opened the kit, showing her the contents: a scanner, a cleanser spray, a tube of regenerative gel. He picked up the scanner. "This will not hurt," the translator conveyed. He slowly reached out and passed the device over her burn. A soft blue light washed over the wound. Sua flinched but held still. When she felt no pain, she relaxed slightly, watching the process with wide, fascinated eyes. The scanner beeped. Minsu looked at the readout. A superficial plasma burn. Painful but not deep. He showed her the screen with the diagram of her leg, the injured area highlighted. She leaned forward, her fear forgotten for a moment in her amazement. He took the cleanser. "This may feel cold." He sprayed it on the burn. She hissed at the sensation but didn't pull away. Then he applied the clear gel. Almost instantly, the pained tension in her small body seemed to ease. The gel was numbing and healing at the same time. She looked down at her leg, then up at him, her expression one of pure wonder. She touched the gel gently with her finger. The immediate crisis was over. Now she was a guest in his home. Minsu's own nervousness began to fade, replaced by a quiet purpose. He needed to make her comfortable. He stood and went to his small kitchen area. He had been about to have tea before the alarm had sounded. He poured a cup of the warm herbal tea he had made from local leaves. He also took a small sweet rice cake from a container. He brought them over and placed them on the floor in front of her. Sua looked at the offering suspiciously. She sniffed the air. The steam from the tea carried a pleasant floral scent. She picked up the cup carefully, mimicking how Minsu held his, and took a tiny sip. Her eyes widened. She took another longer sip. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. Then she picked up the rice cake. She poked it. It was soft. She took a small bite. The sweetness seemed to surprise her. She quickly ate the rest, brushing the crumbs from her fingers. With her basic needs met, her curiosity took over completely. She stood up, testing her leg. The gel had worked fast. She could put weight on it with only a slight wince. She began to explore the pod, always staying within sight of Minsu as if he were a safe anchor in this strange place. She stopped in front of the hydroponic garden, her head tilted. She reached out and gently touched the leaf of a purple lettuce. She looked back at Minsu, a question in her eyes. "Food," he said. "I grow my food here," the translator chirped. She seemed to understand. She pointed at the bright lamps above the plants. "Light," Minsu said. "Like the sun. It helps them grow." She nodded slowly as if this made perfect sense. She moved to his workbench where tools and spare parts were neatly arranged. She didn't touch anything, just observed. Then she saw his datapad. A moving schematic of the pod's water filtration system was on the screen, the lines and shapes slowly rotating. She gasped softly. She pointed at the moving picture, then at the actual water filter humming in the corner. She made a series of quick, excited clicks and chirps. The translator struggled for a moment. "Picture of the water cleaner?" It projected. "Yes," Minsu said, amazed. She was smart. She understood the connection between the abstract diagram and the real object. He picked up the datapad. He opened a simple drawing program and handed it to her. Sua took it carefully. She touched the screen with her finger and a line appeared. She jumped, almost dropping the pad. Then a look of delight spread across her face. She began to draw, her finger moving quickly. She drew a rough shape of a tree, then a six-legged Borland beast. She was communicating. She handed the pad back to him, her eyes shining. Then she pointed towards the door, towards the forest where he had found her. Her expression grew serious. She held up two fingers, then mimicked holding a big gun and making a mean face. She then pointed at Minsu, mimicked his sonic rifle, and then made a crashing sound with her hands for the landslide. Finally, she pointed at herself and then hugged her own shoulders, looking at him with immense gratitude. She was telling the story. She understood that he had saved her from the bad ones. Minsu felt a deep warmth in his chest. He hadn't had a conversation with anyone in years, and now he was having one with a little alien girl, and it was the most meaningful interaction he could remember. The excitement of the day was finally catching up to her. A big yawn escaped her mouth. She was getting tired. Minsu went to a storage locker and pulled out a thick, soft thermal blanket. He folded it and placed it in a cozy corner, making a small bed for her. He pointed to it. You can sleep here. You are safe. Sua padded over to the blanket. She felt its softness and nodded. She sat down, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. The fear was completely gone from her eyes now, replaced by a trusting calm. Before she lay down, she touched the small carved stone pendant that hung around her neck. It was a simple thing, a gray stone with a spiral pattern etched into it. She looked at it, then looked directly at Minsu. She held the pendant in her fist, then extended her hand towards him, opening it. It was a gesture. A significant one. Minsu didn't know what it meant, but he could feel its weight. It was a thank you, a promise, a connection. He nodded slowly, accepting the unspoken message. Good night, Sua. The translator produced a soft, melodic phrase. She lay down, curled up under the blanket, and within moments her breathing became slow and deep. She was asleep. Minsu sat in his chair watching the sleeping child. His quiet, ordered world had been turned upside down in a single night. The pod, which had felt so empty for so long, now felt different. It felt occupied. It felt purposeful. He looked at the readings on his console. The hunter signals were gone. They had likely left the area after losing their prey. For now, the immediate danger was past. But as he looked at Sua's peaceful face, he knew this was not over. She had a family, a tribe. They would be looking for her. What would they think when they found her here with him? Would they see a savior, or would they see another kidnapper like the hunters? The silence of the pod was no longer empty. It was filled with the soft sound of her breathing and with 1,000 new questions. Minsu knew his isolation had ended. He just didn't know what would come next. The first light of the planet's sun filtered through the pod's main window, painting the room in soft shades of orange and yellow. Sua was still asleep, a small, peaceful lump under the thermal blanket. Minsu was already awake. He had slept little, his mind turning over the events of the previous night. He moved quietly, preparing a simple breakfast of rehydrated fruit and more of the sweet rice cakes. He wanted to be ready for when she woke up. He also prepared a small pack. Some food, a water filter, a basic med kit. He had decided while lying awake that he would need to take her back. He would try to find her people to return her safely. It was the right thing to do. Staying here with her forever was not an option. It would only bring more danger to his doorstep. He was checking the charge on his sonic rifle when a sound from outside made him freeze. It was not the sound of an animal. It was not the sound of the wind. It was a deep, resonant note like a horn made of stone and wood. It was a single, long blast that echoed through the quiet valley, shaking the very air. It was a sound that demanded attention, a sound of challenge. Sua bolted upright, her eyes wide awake and filled with a new kind of fear. Not the fear of the hunters, but a fear mixed with recognition and dread. She chirped a single, sharp word that the translator did not catch. Minsu's heart sank. He knew. He went to his main screen and switched the view to an external camera. There, at the edge of the clearing where the forest began, stood a figure. This was no hunter. This was something else entirely. The alien was tall, almost as tall as Minsu, but seemed larger because of his presence. His skin had the same pearly iridescence as Sua's, but it was a map of old battles, crisscrossed with fine, silvery scars. He wore armor fashioned from segments of a dark, chitinous material that gleamed in the morning sun. In his hands he held a long spear. The shaft was made of a dark, polished wood, but the blade was a shard of glowing, crystalline energy that hummed with a low, powerful frequency. His posture was rigid, his feet planted firmly apart. His face was set in a mask of cold, controlled fury. His eyes, the same luminous color as Sua's, were locked on the pod's hidden door. He did not move. He did not shout. He simply stood there, a living statue of vengeance, and the air around him seemed to crackle with promised violence. Sua ran to the door, her small hands pressing against the cool metal. She was talking fast, her musical language tumbling out in a frantic stream. She was trying to tell the warrior something, trying to stop whatever was about to happen. Minsu activated the external speaker. The translator's calm, computerized voice spoke into the morning air. I mean no harm. The child is safe. The warrior's eyes narrowed. He spoke, and his voice was a low, guttural growl that the translator struggled with for a moment before projecting its own version. You have taken a child of the Cathar. The voice boomed from the speaker. You will bring her out. You will face me. Your trickery with the loud things and the moving earth will not save you now. Minsu understood. This was Sua's people. And they did not see a rescuer. They saw a thief, a monster who lived in a metal cave and had stolen one of their young. The landslide he had caused to save her, the sonic rifle he had used, it was all trickery to this warrior. It was not honorable combat. I saved her, Minsu said through the translator, from the Sky Hunters. They hurt her. I helped her. The warrior Taesun let out a short, harsh bark that was probably a laugh. Lies, the Sky Hunters are a danger we know. We fight them with strength and honor. We do not hide in the earth and steal children. Bring her out now. Sua was crying now, shaking her head. She turned to Minsu, her eyes pleading. She was caught between her savior and her protector. Minsu knew that words were useless now. This warrior Taesun was bound by a code. His honor was stained because a child of his tribe was in the hands of a stranger. The only way to wash that stain away was through a challenge. A fight. To hide in the pod would only prove the warrior's point, that Minsu was a coward. He looked at his sonic rifle. He could stun the warrior from inside easily. But then what? That would only make the Cathar tribe his permanent enemies. He would never be able to take Sua home. He would be under siege in his own pod forever. He had to go out. He had to face this. He made a decision. He would not take the rifle. He would not use his technology. He would meet this challenge on the warrior's terms as much as he could. He looked at Sua. Stay here, he said, his voice firm. The translator chirped the command. He typed a code into his console, locking the door from the outside. She would be safe inside no matter what happened. Then he took a deep breath and opened the door. He stepped out into the cool morning air, the door sliding shut behind him. He was wearing only his simple pants and a shirt. He had no armor, no weapon. His hands were open and empty at his sides. Taesun's eyes widened for a fraction of a second, surprised by this. Then his expression hardened again. He saw it as further insult. This soft, pink-skinned creature did not even think him worthy of a weapon. I have no fight with you, Minsu said, the translator projecting his words. Sua is inside. She is safe and healed. You can take her home. Taesun's grip tightened on his energy spear. You think words can erase your crime? You have touched a child of the Cathar. You have brought her to your den. There is a price for this, a debt that must be paid in combat. He took a step forward and the energy blade on his spear flared brighter, its hum growing louder. Fight me. Or are you as weak and cowardly as you look? Minsu stood his ground. He did not raise his fists. He simply settled into a balanced stance, his knees slightly bent, his weight on the balls of his feet. It was a stance for defense, not for attack. I will not fight you, Minsu said, but I will not let you hurt me. This was the final straw for Taesun. With a roar that seemed to shake the leaves on the trees, he charged. He was incredibly fast, a blur of dark armor and glowing light. The spear blade cut through the air, aiming straight for Minsu's chest. Minsu did not try to block it. He could not. Instead, he moved. At the last possible second, he twisted his body to the side. The searing heat of the energy blade passed so close he felt it singe the fabric of his shirt. He used the warrior's own momentum, grabbing the shaft of the spear just behind the blade and pulling, guiding Taesun past him. Taesun stumbled, caught off balance by the lack of resistance. He spun around, his fury now mixed with confusion. He swung the spear in a wide horizontal arc. Minsu dropped to the ground, the blade passing over his head. He rolled back onto his feet, his movements fluid and efficient. He was not attacking. He was evading. He was like a leaf in the wind, impossible to catch. Inside the pod, Sua watched from the window, her small hands pressed against the transparent material, her face wet with tears. She was shouting, but the sound was locked inside the strong walls. Taesun attacked again and again. Thrust, swing, slash. Each move was powerful enough to kill. Each move was precise and skilled. But Minsu was always just out of reach. He ducked, weaved, and sidestepped. He used his forearms to deflect the wooden shaft of the spear, but never tried to grab the energy blade. It was a dance, and Minsu was only dancing away. The warrior was breathing heavily now, his anger making him reckless.
Fight me,
he bellowed. Why do you not fight? Minsu said nothing. He just watched the warrior's eyes, predicting his next move. He was tiring Taesun out. He was showing him, without words, that he had the skill to defend himself but the will not to harm. Finally, in a burst of pure frustration, Taesun lunged forward, committing all his weight to a powerful thrust. Minsu saw the opening. He could have stepped in and delivered a crippling blow to the warrior's exposed throat. He could have broken his arm. He had the chance, but he didn't. Instead, he caught the spear shaft with both hands, using the warrior's own force against him. He pivoted, twisting the weapon and using Tayson's forward momentum to throw him. The large alien warrior flew through the air and landed hard on his back on the soft grass, the spear clattering from his grip. Minsu stood over him, breathing heavily. He did not press his advantage. He did not pick up the spear. He simply took a few steps back, giving Tayson space to recover. Why? Tayson growled from the ground, his chest heaving. He was not just asking why Minsu had thrown him. He was asking why he had been spared. Why do you not fight? Minsu pointed towards the pod, towards where Sua was watching. Then he pointed to the faint, barely visible scar on the girl's leg, visible through the window. He then pointed to the forest in the direction of the hunters. The real enemy was not me, Minsu said, his voice tired but clear. They hurt her. I stopped them. Tayson lay on the ground, looking from Minsu's honest, weary face to Sua's desperate one in the window. He saw the truth. A true monster would have killed him when he had the chance. A kidnapper would not have saved the girl only to face a warrior with empty hands. The furious certainty in his eyes began to break apart, replaced by a slow dawning and deeply unsettling understanding. He had been wrong. The silence in the clearing was heavy and thick. The only sounds were Tayson's ragged breathing and the hum of his energy spear lying uselessly on the grass. He did not get up. He just lay there, staring at the human who had defeated him without striking a single blow. Minsu did not move. He stood a few meters away, his body still tense, ready to react if the warrior's pride forced him to attack again. But the fight seemed to have gone out of Tayson. The cold fury in his eyes had been replaced by a storm of confusion and shame. Inside the pod, Sua was pounding on the window with her small fists, her cries muffled by the thick material. She could see the fight was over, but she was still trapped. Minsu slowly walked to the pod's door, his eyes never leaving Tayson. He typed the code. The door slid open and Sua burst out like a shot. She didn't run to Minsu. She ran straight to Tayson, throwing her small body onto his chest and wrapping her arms around his neck. She was talking fast, her musical voice a rapid, pleading stream. She was telling the story. The whole story. She pointed to the hunter's burn on her leg. She mimicked the big armored figures and their loud guns. Then she pointed at Minsu, and her gestures became soft and grateful. She mimicked him picking her up, giving her tea, putting the cool gel on her wound. She showed Tayson how she could walk on the leg now. Tayson listened. He had no choice. Her words washed over him and he finally heard them. He looked from her healed leg to her earnest, worried face, and then his gaze traveled back to Minsu, who was still just standing and waiting. The truth was undeniable now. This was not the lair of a monster. It was the home of a protector. The human had faced his challenge, proven his strength in the most profound way possible by showing restraint. He had the power to harm, but he chose not to. For the Cathar, a warrior's greatest strength was control, and this strange pink-skinned creature had just demonstrated a level of control Tayson had never seen. Slowly, carefully, Tayson sat up. Sua clung to his arm, still talking softly now, reassuring him. He got to his feet, his movements stiff. He walked over to his energy spear and picked it up. Minsu watched, his muscles tightening, but he did not flinch. Tayson did not raise the spear. Instead, he held it vertically in front of him, point towards the sky in a formal posture. He placed a hand over his chest, where his heart would be, and gave a short, sharp bow from his waist. I was wrong, the translator conveyed, the computerized voice unable to capture the deep regret in the warrior's tone. You have the strength of a mountain and the heart of a river. You saved our future and I offered you death. The debt is great. Minsu finally allowed himself to relax. The tension drained from his shoulders. He bowed his head in return, a simple nod of acceptance. There is no debt, he said. I only did what was right. Tayson looked at the pod, then at Minsu's simple clothes. He seemed to be making a decision. The child, Sua, she says you live here alone in this metal cave. It is my home, Minsu said. You are isolated, Tayson stated. It wasn't a question. It was a recognition of a state of being. Minsu just nodded. Tayson looked at Sua, then back at Minsu. The formal anger was gone, replaced by a curious, appraising look. You have shown us great honor. You have shown me a new kind of strength. Will you share your fire? The translator struggled with the phrase, but the meaning was clear. It was an offer of truce. An invitation to talk. Minsu was surprised. He had expected them to just take Sua and leave. This was something more. He hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Yes, please come inside, he led the way. Sua walked confidently, but Tyson entered the pod with a sense of awe and caution. His large frame seemed to fill the small space. He looked at everything. The glowing screens, the hydroponic garden, the humming machines. His eyes were wide, but not with fear. With fascination. Sua immediately went to the table and picked up the remaining rice cake, offering it to Tyson. He took it, sniffed it curiously, and took a small bite. His stern expression softened in surprise at the sweetness. Minsu went to his main console. The ones who hurt Sua, he said. The hunters, I have a picture of them. He brought up the recorded footage from his hidden cameras. He played the video. There on the screen were the two hulking hunters, their energy weapons firing. The video showed them chasing Sua, the blast that wounded her, and then Minsu's diversion and rescue. Tayson watched, his body rigid. A low growl rumbled in his chest. He pointed at the screen. The Gorg, he spat, the word full of hatred. Slavers, poachers, they have plagued our tribe for many seasons. They take our people when they can. He looked at Minsu, a new, deep respect in his eyes. You fought the Gorg for one of us. I did not fight them, Minsu corrected gently. I tricked them, to save a child. It is the same, Tayson said firmly. You stood against the enemy. For the Cathar. He looked around the pod again, his gaze now seeing it not as a monster's den but as a place of refuge. A fortress. The visit was not long. Tayson was a warrior, a man of action, and he had his people to report to. Sua needed to be returned to her family. As they prepared to leave, Tayson stood by the door. He seemed to be struggling with something. Then he reached to his armor. On his chest was a small carved piece of the same chitinous material. It was shaped like a curling leaf. He worked it loose from a leather tie. It was an ornament, a mark of status. He held it out to Minsu. You are isolated no longer, Tayson said, his voice deep and solemn. You are a friend of the Cathar. Our tribe is your tribe. Our strength is your strength. If the horn sounds, you will come. If you need aid, we will answer. Minsu looked at the offering. It was more than a gift. It was a token, a symbol of belonging. He had lived for so long with nothing, with no connections. He had built walls around himself as high as the stars. And now this warrior who had come to kill him was offering him a place. He reached out and took the carved token. It was warm from the warrior's body heat and surprisingly light. Thank you, Minsu said, the words feeling inadequate. Tayson gave one more nod. Then he put a hand on Sua's shoulder and led her out of the pod. Sua turned at the door and gave Minsu a bright, happy smile and a little wave. Then they were gone, disappearing into the shadows of the trees. The door closed. Minsu was alone again. He stood in the middle of his pod, the silence pressing in on him. But it was different. He looked down at the token in his hand. It was proof. Proof that he was not just a hermit hiding from his past. Proof that he had done something good. Proof that he had a friend. He walked to the window and looked out at the forest. It was the same view he saw every day. The same trees, the same sky. But it was not the same. It was no longer a wall that kept him in. It was a world that for the first time held a connection. He was alone, but he was not lonely. He was Minsu, the human, the friend of the Cathar. And his quiet life on the remote moon would never be the same again. The days that followed were quiet, but the quiet felt different to Minsu. Before, the silence was a blanket, sometimes comforting, sometimes smothering. Now it was just quiet. He went back to his routines. He tended his plants. He checked his machines. He monitored the forest through his cameras. But his eyes often drifted to the small leaf-shaped token he had placed on his main console. It was a simple thing, but it changed everything. He found himself listening for sounds from the forest, not with fear, but with a faint hope. He wondered about Sua. He wondered about Tayson and the Cathar tribe. Were they nearby? Did they think of him? About a week after the confrontation, his external sensor beeped. It was not an alarm. It was a simple motion alert near the edge of the clearing. His heart jumped. He went to the screen and saw not a warrior, but a single Cathar. It was an older male, his pearly skin etched with deep lines. He carried a large woven basket. He stood calmly waiting. Minsu's first instinct was caution, but he remembered the token. He picked it up, held it in his hand, and went to the door. He opened it. The older alien did not flinch. He saw the token in Minsu's hand and bowed his head. He placed the basket on the ground and opened it. Inside were deep purple tubers, bundles of fragrant herbs Minsu had never seen, and several pieces of fruit that glowed with a soft internal light. It was a gift of food. The alien made a series of gestures, pointing to the food, then to his mouth, then to Minsu, and finally, he touched his own head and gave a small bow. The meaning was clear. Thank you for your kindness. Minsu, touched, bowed in return. Thank you, he said, hoping the translator would carry his gratitude. He pointed to the food and then to his own heart, nodding. The Cathar man seemed to understand. He gave a small, wrinkled smile, turned, and walked back into the forest. Minsu brought the basket inside. That evening he cooked the tubers. They were rich and earthy. The herbs made a tea that was both sharp and soothing. It was the best meal he had eaten in years. It was not just the taste. It was the meaning behind it. The visits became a new, gentle rhythm in his life. Every few days a different Cathar would appear. Sometimes it was a hunter, leaving a share of their catch, a large bird-like creature with iridescent feathers. Sometimes it was a gatherer with more fruits and strange edible fungi. They never stayed long. They would leave their gift, exchange a bow with Minsu, and leave. But each visit was a thread, weaving a connection between his isolated pod and the life of the tribe. He, in return, started to leave gifts for them. He used his fabricator to make strong, sharp knives far better than their stone tools. He left them in a designated spot at the edge of the clearing. The next day they would be gone, replaced with a new basket of food. He never saw Sua or Tayson during these exchanges. He assumed they were with the main tribe deeper in the forest. He was content with this quiet trade. It was more than he ever had. Then one afternoon, the deep resonant horn blast echoed through the valley again. This time it was not a single challenge cry. It was a series of short, urgent bursts. An alarm. Minsu was at his console in an instant. His sensors showed a large, concentrated heat signature moving fast through the forest from the east. It was the Gorg hunters, and they were not a small scouting party this time. This was a full hunting group, heading straight towards the area where his Cathar visitors always came from. He knew what the horn meant. It was a call to arms, a call for defense, and he had a token that meant, "Our strength is your strength." He didn't hesitate. He didn't think about the danger. He thought of Sua's smile. He thought of Tayson's honorable bow. He thought of the quiet, generous people who had shared their food with him. He ran to his cabinet and grabbed his sonic rifle. He also took a few other things, a handful of small disc-shaped devices he had built. They were sonic grenades designed to create a deafening blast of noise and confusion. He stuffed them into his pockets. He opened the pod door and ran into the forest, following the direction of the horn and the signals on his wrist scanner. He moved faster than he thought possible, his heart pounding not with fear but with purpose. He came to a ridge overlooking a wide gully. Below he saw the scene. There were 6 Gorg hunters, their gray armor looking like rocks come to life. They had surrounded a group of about 10 Cathar. They were the hunters and gatherers who had visited him. He saw the older man who had brought the first basket, now holding a spear, his face set in defiance. They were trapped, forming a protective circle around their younger members. Tayson was there, fighting brilliantly. He was a whirlwind, his energy spear a blur of light as he held off 2 Gorg at once, but he was outnumbered. The other Cathar fought with courage, but their stone-tipped spears clanged harmlessly off the Gorg armor. It was only a matter of time before they were overwhelmed or captured. Minsu did not run down to join the fight. He was one man. A direct attack would be suicide. But he was not a warrior. He was a strategist. An engineer. He looked at the terrain. The Gorg were in the gully, with the Cathar backed against a steep rock face. Minsu was on the high ground. He raised his sonic rifle. He didn't aim at the Gorg. He aimed at the top of the rocky cliff face directly above them. He fired a sustained blast. The sound wave hit the unstable rocks at the crest. With a deep grinding roar, a section of the cliff face broke loose. It wasn't a huge landslide, but it was enough. A cascade of rocks and dust tumbled down, landing between the Gorg and the trapped Cathar, creating a temporary wall and filling the air with a thick, blinding cloud. The Gorg shouted in confusion. stumbling back from the falling debris. In that moment, Minsu threw 2 of his sonic grenades. They arced through the air and landed behind the Gorg lines. They detonated with a concussive thump-thump that was felt more than heard. The Gorg clutched their helmets, disoriented by the overwhelming noise. Tayson, seeing the miracle happen, did not waste the chance. "Now!" he roared to his people. To the high ground. The Cathar, seizing the opportunity, scrambled up the side of the gully, away from the confused Gorg. Minsu provided cover, firing his sonic rifle at the feet of any Gorg who tried to pursue, knocking them off balance with the invisible waves of force. Within minutes, the entire Cathar group was on the ridge with Minsu. Tayson was the last to climb up, his chest heaving. He looked at Minsu, and in his eyes was not just respect, but something stronger: kinship. Below, the Gorg were recovering, but the element of surprise was gone. Their prey had escaped. Firing their weapons up the ridge blindly, they decided the hunt was not worth the trouble. They turned and retreated back the way they had come, disappearing into the forest. The Cathar gathered around Minsu. They were breathing hard. Some were wounded, but they were safe. The older man who had first brought the basket stepped forward. He placed a hand on his chest and then on Minsu's chest, a gesture of deep gratitude. Tayson came to stand before him. He looked at the sonic rifle, then at the now quiet gully, then back at Minsu. "You heard the horn," Tayson said. "I heard it," Minsu replied. "You fought with us." "I only evened the odds," Minsu said. "You did the fighting." Tayson shook his head, a small rare smile touching his scarred face. "No, you did not just give us food or tools. You gave us your strength when we needed it. You are not just a friend of the Cathar." He looked at the tribe members who were all watching, their expressions full of awe and gratitude. "You are Cathar." The word settled over Minsu. He looked at these people, these aliens who had welcomed him, and he felt a belonging he had never felt anywhere, not even on Earth. He had come to this world to hide from the universe. But the universe, in the form of a little girl and her fierce protector, had found him, and it had given him a home. He was no longer the isolated human. He was Minsu. He was Cathar, and he was finally truly home.